And have you guys heard of, well, we don't celebrate experimental aircraft the way that we did, years ago in Southern California, but NASA is going to demonstrate what's called the low, they poured a lot of money into the low boom flight demonstration. It's the X-59 Quiet SST, or Quiest, I guess. And it's, theoretically, it's going to test the aerodynamics of a very expensive aircraft to prove the commercial viability of supersonic commercial flight, and blah, 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 blah. And the low boom flight demonstration mission has two goals. One, design and build a piloted large-scale supersonic da-da-da. Two, fly the X-plane over select U.S. communities to gather data on human responses to the low boom flights and deliver that data set to U.S. and international regulators. So, cool looking plane. I'll tweet out a link to the X-59. Except the deal is, as you just heard Michael Crozier reading, apparently commercial aviation's lapped NASA on this one, in that a startup company in Colorado has, I guess, on spec, before an aircraft has even been tested, United is in. The era of supersonic commercial flights came to an end when the Concorde completed its last trip. The United Airlines said it was ordering 15 jets that can travel faster than the speed of sound from boom supersonic. And to steal a joke from TV director Ken Olin, is there a better name for a plane than boom, maybe? He has a point, but Boom, which has raised $270 million from venture capital firms and other investors, said it planned to introduce the aircraft in 2025 and start flight tests in 2026. It expects a plane, which it calls the Overture, to carry passengers before the end of the decade. Okay, but then they've already moved plans back and back and back. But this is the will-o'-the-wisp of supersonic flight. If you're unaware of this, Concorde was heavily subsidized by the limeys and the frogs. There was a race in the 60s to get commercial aviation supersonic. And, this came, of course, just a decade after the jet revolution of the Boeing 707 and then the DC-8 and others. And, after that, it did so well, the next logical question is, what if we go a little faster? Because the world shrank when jet commercial transportation became normal, right? And people said, well, what if I got there in half the time? And so the race was on to be the first to build a commercial supersonic transport. And the British and French governments were all in. And the result was a collaboration, and they created the Concorde. And, of course, British Air and Air France each operated it, London Heathrow to New York, Paris to New York. And the fact that the aircraft came down out of supersonic over land was never an issue in France, because the French government said that's not an issue. And if people said you are scaring the, how do you say, cow, or the vache, the whole thing, the French government said, no, you want to refer to what I just said, there's no problem. That is the pride of Gallic engineering, so elegantly designed, with this pointy tip and its broad wings. You should be crying and sing the Marseillaise every time it flies over. You know what that sound is? That's the sound of an omelet or something French.
Gallic engineering.
Engineering.
I absolutely love that, and I will be trying to use that as much as possible.
That is the sound of Jeanne d'Arc crying. It's not a sonic boom. And meanwhile, in Britain, is kind of the same thing. It's like, what are you complaining about? That is the crowning achievement of British aerospace up there. Are you even serious? And so, because had they had to go down to standard speeds before they got to Paris or London, it would have added 30 more minutes on the flight or more. Well, so here's the problem. This is why Concorde did not, succeed. It's because you couldn't fly it over the continental United States. We didn't allow that. We never did. So it never flew to LAX. It was, when they designed it, no one thought, what if a major commercial market didn't allow this thing to fly at its maximum capacity over their country? Then what? And no one thought of that. So the United States said, A, you're not flying that over our continent. B, it ain't ours, so it sucks. F off. And you can fly into JFK, but you better not crack supersonic over the continental United States. And so meanwhile, and this came across sort of as sour grapes, because Boeing, with government money, Boeing designed the Boeing SST, supersonic transport. The Boeing model had variable sweep wings, like the F-14 Tomcat. And it was going to be bigger and faster. It was going to carry twice as many passengers as Concorde. And it's better looking. It would have been better built and the whole thing. And then it just all went kablooey. And speaking of kablooey, Seattle had a gigantic bust. When the SST was not going to go forward, when Boeing ran the numbers and said, this is neat looking, the mock-up is great, we're pretty happy about it, but this other team, the team of crusty old guys with slide rules, they took the 707, they fed it some steroids, and now they have the 747. So Boeing has never, besides the SST, they've never gambled and lost. They saw all that money going into the French-British Concorde, and he said, you know what? More people, cheaper, a little bit slower, that's going to be the next 40 years of aviation. And their bet was correct. The 747, hands down the most successful commercial aircraft of all time, still in operation. Boeing said, that thing is cute looking, it's awesome, it's pointy and needly, but it's breaking the bank, and it's not going to be viable. And the only way it would be viable would be west coast of the U.S. to Asia. That, it would make a difference at that point. But it wasn't going to. Back in 1969, there was no China anyone wanted to go to. It wasn't like now. So that's why this company now, maybe they are finding the market and the time and the whole thing. Because you could go LAX or SFO, zoom to Hawaii. If the thing had the legs, had the range, and it should, or else they shouldn't invest in it. But so that is the brief history. But eventually the British and French had to put their pride aside and just say, this thing is just losing money. And then that one Concorde crashed in Paris because I forget, a prior flight had left some debris or something on some FOD, some foreign object damage on the runway. And as the Concorde rolled over that debris, and I think it was a piece of retread, I mean, literally something as mundane as that, a piece of tire, as it rolled over it, it flipped it up, it pierced a fuel tank.
Wow.
And ever see that footage?
No. Yes, I do. That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And it's struggling to get up in the air, and it looks like an air show. I mean, it's a candle. It's like somebody lit a candle, and it goes bluey, and that, for all intents and purposes, was the end of the Concorde. Not nearly as spectacular as Russia's brief foray into supersonic commercial aircraft. One of the worst aviation disasters at an air show ever. Was it 1972? The Russians had the Tupolev Tu-144 Concordski. That's what they called it. It looked like they just took the plans right out of a super secret room at British Aerospace or Dassault Aviation and took it to Russia and said, make, you there, make go fast. And when they took it to the Paris Air Show, they wanted to be sort of the first in the air with with Soviet engineering and the first ever supersonic commercial aircraft. And the Russians, of course, were going to sort of show fly it from Moscow to Vladivostok every day or whatever. But it's going through its paces, maneuvering around Paris, and it just went boom, and just decided that's a nice suburb to crash in, and it crashed in there. And that was it for the Russian program.
Do you remember the whole Phil Collins thing with the Concorde?
Oh, the video?
No,
Wait.
Live Aid.
No.
He was the first person to ever perform on 2 different continents at the same time because he performed at Wembley earlier in the day, took the Concorde all the way to, I believe it was Philadelphia.
Or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, and then he ended up performing on the stage here in the U.S. at the same exact time.
Do they know it's Christmas? Of course not. Somalia, they're Muslim.
It's in the air tonight.
So there you go. But with new materials, new engines, it'd be interesting to see the flight. But the reason, just to end the circle, the NASA is spending billions and billions coming up with low sonic boom aircraft, but they don't even have their data yet. And these guys look like they're going to just repeat the Concorde. But can this thing fly supersonic across the continental United States? If that's what United thinks it's going to do, then they need to read the history of the Concorde. Back right after this, Tim Conway Jr. Show, Brian Suits filling in, KFI AM 640 live everywhere on the iHeart Radio app. Michael Crozier with the news.